Hello everyone, today's video is a continuation in the series surrounding the recent budget, and today we're going to talk about the SEISS, the Self-Employed Income Support Scheme. So let's talk about the fourth tranche or the fourth round of this grant. So this grant is meant to cover the 3 months from February to April. So February, March, April. And like with the previous 3 rounds under the SEISS, there is a cap on this. There is a cap which is $2,500 per month. So over the 3-month period, that's $7,500. And the grant is meant to be worth 80% of 3 months' average trading profits. So that, remember, that's if your profits are lower than the cap, you don't get the cap, you get the lower amounts. But if they are higher, then it will be capped at that amount. So 7,500 is the most that you're going to get to represent that 3-month period, February, March, April. Now, to be able to claim, if you're self-employed, you have to have done and submitted a 2019-20 self-assessment tax return. Now, you remember in the first 3 tranches of the grant, it was all about submitting the 2018-19 tax returns. And a lot of people said, well, that's unfair if we've just set up in business quite recently, i.e. within the 19-20 tax year, then they're going to fall through the cracks and not be part of this. Well, now, fast forward 9 months or so, we're beyond the filing deadline for the 19-20 tax return. So the government has all the data on those self-employed individuals who have filed 19-20 tax returns. So they reckon about 600,000 people will now be newly eligible for the SEISS grant that weren't eligible just a few months ago because they hadn't done the necessary tax return. So now, got to factor in the 19-20 tax return. Still, no real help there then for businesses who have started since the pandemic. Thousands and thousands of people have set up in self-employment, set up on their own since the start of the pandemic. But the start of the pandemic was right at the end of the 19-20 tax year. So, i.e. it was in the 2021 tax year that's about to end in a few weeks' time. So, no support in this grant for those individuals, but it does bring in apparently another 600,000 for the year before. Okay, so the eligibility criteria, the remainder of the eligibility criteria for tranche number 4 is the same as with tranche 3, which is that your profits must be no more than £50,000 a year, self-employed profits. If you have had profits more than that, then you're not eligible for the grant. And remember, there's 50% rule as well. 50% on your tax return. You look at your tax return, you say, right, look at the various components of the income on the tax return. The self-employment bit, whatever is on your tax return, the self-employment bit has to be at least 50% of the total. So if your self-employment is 40% of your income, and you had a job as well, so you had some employment income, you might have had a buy-to-let property, and that is total 60%, then you won't qualify. The self-employment component has to at least be half of the total income on your tax return. So don't forget about that one. What about the anything else on round 4? No, that's about it. But it's again, as with the previous rounds, remember the government will contact you. You don't have to get in touch unless you haven't heard anything and you think you are due to be part of this, because they have all the data. They've got all the tax returns. They can work out exactly what your grant should be if you meet the 50% threshold, all that kind of stuff. They've got all the data to hand. So they should be contacting you. And from what we've seen so far, they have been in touch with people fairly quickly. From the date that each one of these has been announced. So that was tranche 4 that covers February, March, April 2021. Now, again, they've announced in the budget tranche 5, which will be the 5th and final. Now, I know they said last year, I think the second one was going to be the final one. Now we're on 5, but this, I say hopefully. Hopefully, a lot of people will say, actually, no, not hopefully, we want 6, 7, and 8. But hopefully by an inference that we're coming out of the pandemic. So, fifth and final grant to cover the period May to September, so longer than the 3 months for the previous grants. And interesting thing about this, what he announced last week in the budget, that this will be determined by a turnover test. So the previous 4 tranches of the grant were all about profits, but the 5th one will be about turnover. And it says here that it's all about ensuring that support is targeted at those who need it most as the economy reopens. So people whose turnover has fallen by 30% or more will continue to receive the full grant, which is 80% of 3 months' worth of average profits, capped at 7,500. People whose turnover has fallen by less than 30% will receive 30% of the grant, capped at 2,850. And this grant can be claimed from late July 2021. Further details will be published in due course. So how on earth can they determine that based on a turnover test? With the tax returns, yes, you can see the profits, the data was all there. But a lot of these businesses may not be VAT registered, for example, self-employed. If you are turning over less than 85,000, you don't need to be VAT registered. So if there's no data going into HMRC on a regular basis or even annually to do with turnover, how can they determine that? Yes, on your tax return, they can see the turnover for 1920, but this to me talks about being in real time, talks about the turnover that has gone down more recently because of the pandemic. And I'm not quite sure how they will work out the businesses in terms of the turnover that's gone down. Is it going to be a self-certification where business owners say, look, this is an extract from my management accounts that shows that it's gone down? Well, that's open to all sorts of manipulation and abuse, but it could be the only way. I cannot think of another way where HMRC can get real-time data for turnover, particularly, like I said, if you're not VAT registered. If you're VAT registered, yes, you're going to see it, and you'll be able to see the drop-off potentially in the turnover based on the output VAT. Crude kind of measure, but well, it's fairly accurate actually. But like I said, not all self-employed people are VAT registered. So how will they measure this 5th grant if it is based on a turnover model? Who knows? But like I said, details will be published in due course. So let's see what they have to say about that. So that's just an overview of the budget announcements related to the SEISS from the 2021 budget. If you like this video, please do subscribe right there, and I will see you soon.